One of my favorite podcasts of the off season because I learned something and you learned something. Let's learn about the Pacers' new players from people who covered them at their prior stops. Kam Jones at Marquette, Jay Huff at Memphis, and Taelon Peter at Liberty. You'll learn way more about those guys today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, like I said in the intro, one of my favorite shows. You get to learn a lot about the Pacers' new players. Nice and tidy this year. They have 3 new guys who have never played for the Pacers before or are new to the ecosystem, and Kam Jones, Taelon Peter, and Jay Huff. And we're going to learn about them from people who covered them at their last stop. Andrew Fleck covers Marquette for AnonymousEagle.com and has for a long time. He had some great insights on Kam Jones. Joel Mullinax, a Locked On Grizzlies, stops by to talk about Jay Huff and his ascent into a rotation quality player last year with the Grizzlies. And then Killian Wright covers the draft for Draft Digest and was one of the few people I could find who had Taelon Peter ranked as a draftable prospect before the draft. Talks about Taelon Peter, what makes him special, what the career of him could look like. Great show. I learned a lot, which I hope means that you will learn a lot as well. Let's start with Kam Jones and just get right to it. Andrew Fleck is here. He runs AnonymousEagle.com, the Marquette blog at SB Nation, which means he knows more about Kam Jones and will forget more about Kam Jones than I might ever know in my entire life. The 38th pick in the draft, and a really interesting kind of journey for him at Marquette from year to year, playing with and without Kolek and other players in and out, obviously with NBA levels of talent on that team. So when you look back at his 4 years with the Golden Eagles, when did you kind of realize Kam Jones this is an NBA level college player?
Oh, that's a really good angle on that. I think the first clue for me probably started cropping up his sophomore year, which would have been the first of the 2 back-to-back number 2 seeds for Marquette with Kam on the team. It wasn't just that he was part of that team. Wasn't that he was just part of the first Marquette team to ever earn a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. It was, and I know this sounds hard to believe, but he was the leading scorer on that team. He ended up finishing at just over 15 points a game, more than 3 points a game, more than 2 points a game, rather. Better than Tyler Kolek, who is now with the Knicks. More than Olivia Maxence Prosper, who is now with the Mavericks. More than Oso Ighodaro, who is now with the Suns. Kam Jones, as a sophomore, was the leading scorer on that team. When he was doing that and the other guys were getting their props for guiding Marquette to that number 2 seed, I was like, but that guy's the leading scorer and got basically no publicity for it whatsoever. At that point, I was like, there might be something here, not to mention the rate at which he was putting the ball through the basket too. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, his scoring was really interesting to kind of watch progress just through random highlight packages and synergy clips from year to year, especially somebody who's so lefty dominant. You have to kind of add variation of shot diet into your game. So 1 year it's the floater, 1 year it's the 3, 1 year it's the package of all this stuff. So I was curious, kind of looking back from somebody who watched him, about that timing, because if he comes in with all these skills, just refining them is not going to be enough to get to the NBA. But if he's the premier scorer on a team like that, that obviously is very telling. And I think in Summer League, I don't know if you watched every single Kam Jones Pacers game or not. You did rank every Marquette player of their Summer League performances. So very impressive. A guy on there, I was like, never even heard of this person before who played for the Bucks Summer League team. The one game where he was the only point guard the Pacers had active, he was a great scorer, over 20 points, had great synergy with their bigs. It's that would be the hope as the Pacers. And that's the other part I'm curious about from your perspective, is that year Tyler is gone. He is with the Knicks, and they said, Kam Jones, you're the one. When you went into that season, did you think he could develop the passing to the extent that he did? Were you surprised in any way by that? And how much did that kind of change his impact and performance as a player?
That's where things got a little bit unique for Marquette, and for people keep track of Marquette at that point. Cam had the unique perspective, and Marquette fans rather had the unique perspective of actually seeing what that was going to look like. Tyler Kolek missed a chunk of time at the end of his senior year, and at that point, Marquette said, "Okay, Shaka Smart, Nevada Smith, the guys running the offense of the end of things, turned around and said, hey, look, Cam, we think you can do this. What if you kind of just go do the same similar stuff that Tyler was doing? You take over the one." And it didn't quite come together right away. You could almost see the light bulb turn on with him, where he's like, "Oh, it does work when I make this same pass that Tyler can do. Oh, I can do it." And so during that stretch where Kolek missed time, all of a sudden you were seeing kind of a little bit of a preview of what Marquette was going to look like the next year. So it's a little unfair to say, "Oh, I didn't really think he was going to be able to do this." No, I absolutely did. Whatever, suddenly popping and turning into an All-American while doing it, that I don't know. But having a belief that he could do that job, play that role with Marquette, I absolutely believed it going into the year.
The scoring alone is enough to be like, okay, this is interesting to pro teams. But when you add in the game, he had 20 points that I'm referencing. He had 11 assists. The fact that you can be that level of setup, man. And what I was impressed by then is at Summer League, these guys have played together for 6 days and no one knows any tendency or anything. You got to be really heady to have an 11 assist game, and your teammates have to make shots, but he was so patient. He'd come around these screens and see 2 defenders, and you expect this young kid to just be like, "Oh, I can make this floater. I did this in college all the time." And he'd wait a sec and hit the big, or then he'd shoot. That was okay, he learned something in that Kolek-less time to me to know how to manipulate a defense, not just for his own ability to score, which he's quite good at, but for the benefit of others as well. I'm curious what you mentioned, all these guys that are now pros from the Golden Eagles, from this current era as well. Shaka Smart's stuff, baseline out of bounds plays with an elevator screen to the corner and double drag every freaking play for Kam Jones. It's not typical college stuff. It's more NBA slanting and how they do it. How much have you seen that help former Marquette players when they do get to the pros? Because the Pacers are a very concept team. We'll talk about his fit here specifically in a second, but how have you seen that benefit, or even in some cases not benefit them when they do get to the pros, and can that help Cam at this level?
That I'm not 100% sure about, because we haven't yet seen any of Shaka's Marquette guys truly pop at the NBA level. Some of it's just that's how it goes. Olivier Maxence Prosper got injured this past season, so I'm sure he could have had a bit more of a bigger role with Mavericks, especially after they traded Luka, but he got hurt at the exact same time. Tyler Kolek and Iguodala were second-round picks for the Knicks and Suns, and so they weren't supposed to play a big role, but also ended up playing in 60-something games. So, as a guy who is essentially an undersized big, still finding a spot admittedly on a Suns team that wasn't doing too hot, but he carved out a role and did a lot of neat things for him. And then Kolek kind of got stuck behind the Thibodeau wall. And couldn't find his way out the court. He did have a chance to put up some numbers when Jalen Brunson had it was February, March, I think it was, injury. Had a nice run. Guys do find ways to succeed. I think part of that probably goes back to Nevada Smith's time as a head coach in the G League. He had a couple of different stints with I think it was just 2 different teams down in the G League. So he does understand. That's been a few years back now, but he does understand what NBA executives are looking for. They do understand a little bit more, I guess we'll call it a modern approach to the game, where you got to let these guys create. And that's a big thing with Shaka's offense. There's we'll call it a play, but it was something that Shaka insisted that Iguodala and Kam Jones just came up with on their own. It doesn't look like much, but it's effectively just they can do it a bunch of different ways, but effectively it works into Iguodala out kind of in between elbow and 3-point line, And it looks just like a dribble handoff, except Cam stops short and just shoots it over the top of Iguodala. Somebody brought this up at a press conference at some point, and Shaka just looks the reporter straight in the eyes like, I'm not joking. We don't drill it. They came up with that on their own. So if it could turn into a situation where you got a coaching staff that's willing to have a little bit of freelancing, and hey, this is the NBA. Like the players are getting the money. If they want to freelance and create some stuff, you kind of got to let them. And so if it's a situation where the Pacers coaching staff is open to whatever weird ideas pop into Kam Jones's head, things are going to work out.
I love that. That's funny. A lot of times I watch college and it's like pulling teeth for me where I'm like, what is this team even trying to do? But I didn't like with Marquette. I was like, oh, this is nice. Like this is actually like a real basketball game with real stuff going on. Some of the stuff you just said bleeds into this answer because the Pacers are very conceptual and like, it's not individual creativity that makes it work. Like they all know what they're doing and it's very well connected and it requires a lot of practice time and all that, but they're not like, walk it up, run this play. Well, okay, run that play. Okay, we're running four. Like they just fly around. It's they just made the finals. Everybody saw them. Do you expect that will be a Kam Jones kind of system? Like, can he fit well with that?
Oh, absolutely. Sticking with the same idea of like they just came up with some stuff. They've done open practices and stuff like that. So like they run drills. And that kind of a thing where like they're teaching basic core concepts of how they want the offensive structure to work. They're not really drilling like, take 4 steps forward, drop set this screen, etc. Like they have like baseline plays and that kind of stuff, obviously, but just free flowing up and down the court stuff. They drill concepts. This is how we want to get to where we are on the floor. We want everybody on the team to be able to make this pass, etc., etc. But going back to, like I said, Oso and Cam came up with a thing on their own. There was somebody put together this package. I forget who it was in college basketball internet. It was. They put together like a 4-minute highlight reel of, oh, look at this action from Marquette. They set this screen and they're doing this drag and they're doing whatever, this, that, and the other. And because whoever it was tagged Cam on Twitter, he saw it. And so he quotes it. And his entire response to it is, we was just hooping, man. It's this elaborate, like, chalkboard freeze frame, drawing the lines, setup of, like, this is what they're doing. And, yeah, they are. Like, you can't, once they show you this is the screen they're running, yeah, that's what they are doing. But it's just basketball. Like, they're just like, yeah, we have it in our head, and we're, like, when we see a thing open up to us, blah, blah, blah. But Cam's like, no, like, yeah, it's what it looks like, but we're just playing basketball. We're just out here hooping, man.
Yeah, that is a good fit for the Pacers.
Absolutely. That is the kind of thing
he'll be very comfortable. He still gets 2 games a year at least in Fiserv Forum. It's like he never left, right? The Central Division. Well, Levon, Andrew, this was fantastic. Thank you very much. If Pacers fans are interested in finding the things you've written about Kam Jones in recent months, weeks, etc., where can they find it?
Absolutely. AnonymousEagle.com is the website. We're part of the SB Nation family of websites. Stop on through. I try to keep paying attention to all of our guys as they move on to the NBA. So as the season goes along, it'll mostly just be ongoing Marquette stuff. But when we swing around to the playoffs, we'll be paying attention as much as possible to what the Pacers are doing. Fingers crossed, we get to keep talking about you guys next year.
And ranked Kam Jones very highly of the Marquette players in Summer League. I will not spoil the exact spots, so people have to read it. Andrew, thank you. Everybody, thanks for listening to this part. Coming up, Jay Huff time. Everybody, quick break so we can talk about Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you are growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. You can learn so many surprising things when you track your spending with Monarch Money, like specific categories that you might be spending more than you thought on takeout, subscriptions, etc. And everything in one app makes it so easy to manage your day-to-day money. Even if you're doing it with someone else, you can have shared accounts right there on the same page. Chase your financial goals seriously, have all your spending in one place, and figure out what is adding up too fast in a way that helps you control your spending and take control of your finances. With Monarch Money, use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. How about that? That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off of your first year. Entering last year, another two-way. No one knew much about Jay Huff. Exiting last year, 65 more games, some playoff appearances, a real impact for the Memphis Grizzlies. Joe Mullinax is one of the hosts of Locked On Grizzlies. He's here to help us talk about Jay Huff. And Joe, I have watched a good amount of Jay Huff now because he's on the Pacers. I get the feel for what happened here, but you saw this day to day that he enters not on a contract and got one right away. Like before October was even over last year. How did he kind of ascend and take off for Memphis? What allowed that to happen?
Well, it's kind of the same reason, to be honest with you, that he's no longer with the Memphis Grizzlies. And I know we'll talk more about that. It's a skill set. You know, it's not just the super cool backwards dunks. He's one of the most unique dunkers in the entire NBA. If your viewers or listeners haven't seen that yet, they will eventually. He loves the backwards reverse jam for some reason, super into it. But beyond that, what makes him a really good end of rotation, end of bench player is his versatility as a stretch five. He is a really good three-point shooter for the center position, spaces the floor nicely. He does also rebound particularly well, especially as an offensive rebounder. He does some strong things there at times for stretches, and he's a decent rim protector. He's one of the better shot blockers again, in that tier of big, right? I'm not talking about comparing him with, Wembanyama. But in the tier of if you're looking for an end of rotation big that can space the floor and protect the rim a little bit, Jay Huff's your guy. He really is strong in those spaces. And like I said, considering he's a stretch five, he's a better offensive rebounder than you'd expect him to be. So he comes into Memphis and he does, especially those first two, particularly well. And Taylor Jenkins wanted stretch fives. He was very interested in that type of big. Hence him getting that opportunity to be that full-time player instead of the two-way guy, and the rest is history. It really is a pretty impressive ascent when you think about it. He was playing Summer League 14 months ago, right, or 13 months ago, and now you're looking at a guy that has the opportunity to play a decent amount, I would imagine, for the Pacers in what will probably be a gap year for them.
Yeah, he gets to be invited to the Players Association, go ball out in Spain.
Yeah.
Shaving the beard. Look at Jay Huff. What a year for Jay Huff. It's really interesting to kind of digest him because he had such a quality, like clearly useful player season. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's played less than 100 games, like total in his career, which is such a fascinating thing to kind of connect in my brain because I don't know if criticism is the right word, but a lot of the drawback of Jay Huff is like, I don't know what you would say, but like it's not there night to night. Like it's kind of inconsistent on some. It's like 16-4-5, 13-4-5. Is that what you felt like reality was for him? And was there anything specific that allowed him to either launch some nights and not others? Or is it just like this is an inexperienced player? This is life for them.
I think he's a limited player, right? He doesn't have a skill set beyond the things that we just talked about, really. And I think that when you're limited like that, that limits your ability to be an impact player depending on the matchup, right? If you're playing a team that has a reserve big that struggles against stretch fives, then he's going to have a strong evening, right? In terms of getting out to if a defender can't get out in front of you, or you're able to very quickly get off the dribble, like Jay Huff can do on a very limited standpoint, it's all matchup dependent. He really can help in that specific way. If you're playing a team that's athletic and has bigs that can move on the perimeter, he's not going to be able to help you as much. He's not a very good screener, which I'm sure we'll talk more about here in a moment. So with him, he really has a game that is dependent on being able to be a pick and pop player, a quick one or two dribbles, get to the basket. He doesn't do that often. He does it well enough that you have to respect it. But he's a much better three-point shooter that people are going to stay out over top of him there. It's just the inconsistency that comes with being a reserve player that isn't particularly good at much other stuff other from those two things. But again, he's above average in those spots, which is why he is an NBA player. Not every NBA player is going to be good at everything. That's why some guys get paid more money than others.
Yeah, the theory of those skills is like that was Miles Turner's best skills. He obviously did a lot of other stuff, right? And that's where the Pacers could have appeal. However, they don't have Tyrese Haliburton. And there were some games where against Detroit, Jalen Duren doesn't want to come out and guard Miles Turner. Great. He's going to hit 6 threes. The Pacers are going to win that night. So maybe the answer is just that they would rather have Jock Landale in a pick and a swap. But why was Jay Huff even available? In Pacer land, I don't know if you've seen this.
Yeah.
There was a a tweet that was like, this is 80% of Miles Turner for 1/10 of the price or whatever.
Goodness gracious.
And I was like, well, I don't like if he is that, why would he be available for the price that he was? But regardless, like why would, if this player is as good as like some of the statistical stuff says, like why was he available?
He is a poverty-stricken man's Miles Turner. I would know in no way, shape, or form would I say he is anywhere near what Miles Turner is. Miles Turner, I think Indiana Pacers fans, and I've been there before as a Grizzlies person, well, Desmond Bane wasn't that good. Well, actually he was, right? There were like 7 or 8 people in the NBA that did what he did offensively last year.
Indiana native Desmond Bane
made the All-Star team, right? So except for him. So I think that it's okay to just kind of come to terms with losing a good basketball player like Grizzlies fans have had to do the last couple of months. Pacers fans are going through that now. Jay Huff will be able to fill that role if your plan is to be a play-in team, right? Like if you're comfortable with being in that mix, which maybe Indiana is with Haliburton out, right? I'm not as familiar with what the goals will be in this gap year, similar to the Celtics, right? You just could trot out a team. You got Siakam, obviously, still. You see what you guys are able to do. Jay Huff will be able to do some of those things. The reason he was available is because there was a coaching change in Memphis. Taylor Jenkins wanted that stretch 5, wanted more out of that. DeMichael Cole, my co-host, and I would often talk about, well, why was Zach Edey the pick then, right? Because Zach Edey at 7'4", 290 pounds can shoot the 3 better than you expect him to, but that's not what you want your 7'4", 290-pound big to do consistently. You want him to be a 7'4", 290-pound big and go be big. So I think with Tomas Isolo now being the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, part of the reason Isolo is the head coach is he believes in Edey in the role that makes Edey great, that screener, that rebounder, where he can be dominant as an NBA player using his size. That's not where Jay Huff shines, right? That's not his skill set. That's not his MO. Landale, you mentioned a moment ago, that's another guy that can be a screener, be a true legitimate big. The Grizzlies already have perimeter bigs, right? They have Jaren Jackson Jr., who's one of the better perimeter bigs in the entire NBA. They have a Gigi Jackson who could translate to being he's 6'9", 225. Like that's somebody that could be a stretch 4 down the road. They have numerous pieces that are already kind of filling that role. They need something different from the center position, and it wasn't something that Jay Huff can provide.
That makes perfect sense to me, man. You just ran through the gauntlet of Indiana connections. Conchar's still there. Bane, Zach Edey. There's so many. Jaren, obviously.
You can have Conchar if you want him. I will send John Conchar and a ham sandwich to you in exchange for, maybe tickets to the Indianapolis 500 next year or something.
I like Jitty. He's okay, right?
No. We don't have enough time in this segment. John Conchar is fine. I don't want to upset Indiana folks.
Mastodons, baby. The Don.
It's not a personal thing against John Conchar. I just wish he would shoot the basketball, which he doesn't do. And it really bothers me. Oh, look, he's wide open and he passes to someone else. But I digress.
That does happen quite often to a certain player too. Okay, you mentioned something that I think is actually thought of differently here. You said good rebounder, Jay Huff. The per game numbers are not high. Obviously, he doesn't play a ton of minutes. The perception of him here is that he's like, that is somewhere like Miles Turner that he is kind of lacking. Do you disagree with that? You think he's a good rebounder?
I think he is a good, let me be a little more clear. I think he is a good rebounder considering what his skill set is. When you think of a stretch 5, right, he's not under the basket, right? Just the laws of physics would dictate that he's not able to grab many rebounds. And I think that's the spot that Miles Turner kind of fits under. He, when he is there, is better at it, in particular offensively, right? Again, we talk about the awkward putbacks. Part of it might be just, how weird it is, the way that he goes and gets a rebound and the way he goes up. Players are like, what the hell is that, right? It could be as simple as that. But I think it's more so you would expect him as a stretch 5 to do less there. And obviously that, the numbers do back that up. When he's in that position, if the Pacers ever have him be more of a traditional big, he is better at that than you would expect him to be. And when he is in that space, he's also a decent outlet passer, right? If you want to get out on the fast break, move a little bit, he is strong in that area where he just keeps it above his head, launches it out up on the break. That's something that he's not bad at. The numbers won't say he's a good rebounder. And again, given his role and what he's most comfortable at doing, I would agree with that sentiment. But if you want him to be more of a traditional big, he can do that in spurts for you. but it's fair to say that he is not a good rebounder because of the role that he plays.
We're on a small sample, so how real do you think the shot is? And you mentioned screening earlier. Would you consider that a weakness, a strength? Let's round out the skills with those two.
Screening is a massive weakness. If he was a good screener, he'd still be a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. I firmly believe that. So if you're looking for him to be a pick and roll maven that's going to create space downhill, not going to happen. Again, he'll provide spacing. He'll be out on the perimeter. He'll do well there. He was a good three-point shooter at Virginia. Go Virginia Cavaliers. He and
you do
Ty
not have
Jerome
to tell
were
Rick
teammates.
Carlisle more about him being a Virginia guy. Yes.
Yes. And he and Ty Jerome were, on that
That's right.
2019 team that won the national championship. So for a minute there, I live in Virginia. I was like, oh, hey, yeah, all right. These guys are going to go on a run together. And then, a week later, Jay Huff got traded. I think he's a bad screener. You can't expect him to be strong in that space. The shot is real. I think that he could be a 38 to 40% consistently three-point shooter. The Grizzlies just don't need/want that from their center under Tuomas Isolo. If that's something the Pacers are trying to replace with Miles Turner gone. Again, he is not Miles Turner, but I would say he's closer to Miles Turner as a three-point shooter than he is as a defender.
I think that is true as well. If you want more on the Grizzlies, and they're not Jay Huff, future Locked On Grizzlies is the way to go. Joe Mullinax, to Michael Cole every single day. Zach Edey, Jaren Jackson, John Conchar.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is an Indiana connection too, right? There's all sorts of Indiana connections.
Right. He is straight up from Indy, as easy as it gets. Bain is gone. That ruins one of them. They had another Indy player not long ago, but I can't remember who it was. Now it's bothering me.
Well,
they were like Indy. They were like the far. I know. It's not coming to me is the problem. I'm like on Basketball Reference listening to you talk, trying to figure out who it is, and I can't do it, which means it's not important. Jake LaRavia, duh, Indiana.
LaRavia.
Right.
Yep,
if you want more on all those players, past and present for the Grizzlies, Locked On Grizzlies with Joe and DeMichael's the way to go. Joe, thank you very much. Next up here will be Taelon Peter, everybody. Coming right back. Taelon Peter, at first viewed as a surprise pick. Now everybody's starting to get it after Summer League. He earned the two-way he got with the Pacers. I've made my discussions on the pick, but Killian Wright, our guest for this segment, was, through my research of pre-draft discussions, one of the only people calling Taelon Peter a draftable prospect before the draft, and not surprised to see him go 54, covering the draft for Draft Digest in the league for many other places. Killian, when did you first kind of realize, one, who Taelon Peter even was, and two, that, like I said, that he could be somebody that makes sense for a team to actually pick in this draft?
Well, he had come up on my feed probably a couple weeks before the draft. I was going through some queries on Bordervik, and I'd noticed I was looking for something for a Mizzou piece on Caleb Grill, who's kind of an athletic shooter, and then all of a sudden this guy Taelon Peter comes up, and I was like, hold on, well, what am I working with here? There's another Caleb Grill out here, or oh, he might be even better. Oh, he is better. Okay. And so I start looking at this guy, and it's this crazy athletic shooter. He really sticks out from the pack as this group of guys in the collegiate world who are elite shooters, but he really sticks out because of everything else he does and his athleticism and kind of his just skills and his ability to function within the flow of an offense was like, whoa, this might be an NBA player. He's definitely worth throwing on the big board. Had him in the top 60. And then what do you know? Indiana Pacers take him at 54. And it felt like a very Pacers pick to me, at least.
They have done this before where they see the numbers and they can't get away from them. That's how Terry Taylor landed his spot on the Pacers for multiple years. Rick Carlisle even credited the analytics staff for finding Terry Taylor, who lasted in the G League for all of a month and a half before they put him on a two-way and said, let's go. Right? They are all about these start with the stats, figure out if he's good kind of players. And it's funny because so the Pacers played till June 22nd. Like I did next to zero scouting work this year. So they picked Taelon Peter, and I go to Basketball Reference, and I'm just like, quick overview. And I, for some reason, see his 2-point percentage first, and it's in the 70s. And I was like, oh, wait, this is a guard. Like, that's crazy. So that's what I posted. I was like, oh, here's Taelon Peter from Liberty. He made 77% of his twos. And everyone's like, dude, did you see his threes, right? I was like, oh, I do now. He also made those. And I also went to Bart like you. And I think he was one of like 20 players who shot or had a true shooting percentage over 70 and dunked like over 15 times. And all the rest were bigs, except for one kid on Belmont whose name I can't remember, who I was like, who is that? But he wasn't a draft guy. And I was like, oh, so this is the pitch, is that it's like you're saying when you're looking for a Mizzou player, an athletic shooter. How like rare to you is that archetype? Because he's only 6'3", 6'4", but to me, if you start at can make shots and is not just that, like that alone is somebody you'd want to try to make better, because there's not that many of those to me.
Yeah, just to give a perspective on how rare this is exactly, he's one of 20 players since 2009 to shoot at least 100 threes, make 40% or more on those, and still hold a true shooting percentage of 70. And so he's a pretty rare shooter on his own. But then you go down the list, and he is the only one of those to have even more than 5 dunks. He converted 21 of 22. Most of those guys didn't even get one. So among all like the great shooters of the last decade or so in college basketball, he is by far and away the most athletic one. I believe he like held his high school record in the high jump.
Yeah, I'm going to call him out for this. Actually, he did media and he said he called himself a sneaky athlete. I was like, dude, you won state high jump. That's not sneaky.
Yeah, yeah, he's not sneaky, just an athlete. He's a real above the rim guy. And he can really finish there too. And it shows not just when he's finishing at the rim, but his kind of functional athleticism shows in other parts of the game too. Is whoa, he's actually a pretty capable defender. And wow, he can really fly in transition on both ends. He can get up and down the court and be a ball stopper, and then also finish on the offensive end. Really functional rebounder. Yeah, he had 3 games with 9 or more rebounds. He really gets after it, and so he's really a unique athletic shooter. And even in the sense of like, you really don't see it that much in college basketball, but honestly, you don't see too many Taelon Peters in the NBA. If he translates well, he's going to be a pretty rare guy.
Yeah, synergy, like his play type data was crazy, but transition being one of among his best is telling for the Pacers specifically. Like they'll run the open floor. If there's space that he can take it, great. Like some shooters don't want to cut because they want to take the 3, he'll cut. And that's the thing in Summer League that when they were considering whatever they were going to do with their last 2, when he could guard and it wasn't embarrassing, you just never know with guys of his height who are like rapidly shot up in quality of opponent in the last 18 months, going from D2 to Liberty to the pros. When he held up there, I thought, okay, they've got to give him something. Like this is interesting, and this isn't just like, oh, he can make threes. Like there's a lot of guys who can make threes. He can also dunk and hit the open floor and guard, and like you should try to invest in this and see what this is. And then they signed him to a 2A, cover all that, whatever. And then I'm like, how does this happen? And what I mean by that is like, what we're talking about, like I looked this up after the draft, right? But there are people whose job it is, and like you figured it out before the draft, like, oh my God, like what is this statistical profile? How does someone like this slip through the cracks, for a better term, for a full season where they're like not touted as this high level prospect, even though a lot of statistical indicators are like, this is clearly on paper a good player?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the case of Peter, the 2 major turnoffs for a lot of teams were probably he was on the older side. I mean, he was 23 at the time of the draft. Obviously, you've seen teams kind of this year especially dip into that older pool of talent for the second round. So that's probably why he got picked this year. Maybe if it was any of the other last 3 or 4 years, he doesn't, but this year he does. And then also the Conference USA thing. Obviously Pascal Siakam, Conference USA guy to get drafted. Right. But aside from him, it's been a little rough the past decade or 15 years or so. You're looking at a lot of fringe roster guys who just haven't really found like a consistent role in the NBA. So I think those are probably the 2 major turnoffs as to why Taelon Peter fell in the draft and almost didn't get drafted. But so I understand from that perspective, but at the same time, it's a little surprising to me that maybe he wasn't on more NBA teams' radars. This wasn't exactly a class full of stellar shooters. It was pretty weak in that regard, honestly. And so I think the fact that the Pacers were able to land Peter as low as they did could actually be regarded as a steal, in my opinion.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's what you want at 54. And like, I think they've kind of learned through the years that this is the type of 54 pick that makes more sense, right? They went through Kendall Brown, Cassius Stanley types. Like there's the athleticism. Let's see if they can develop the skills. And like, that doesn't work as well. That's way harder. There's a reason that those guys aren't as skilled. And in college, you can get by with the athleticism. In the pros, you can't. Like the other way around of trying to turn the skills into like either higher IQ play or like ratcheting up the level of quality, like with Alize Johnson and now Taelon Peter, and we'll see if, I could name other players that fall into this category. This seems like the better way to go, given the way the NBA is trending. And I think that is a safer bet. Like, if he doesn't develop at all, at least you could throw him out there and he might be able to make a three. He's got a long way to go in a lot of other aspects of his game, like dribbling in particular. But that makes more sense to me as somebody to try to get a steal with late in the draft. And the Pacers, I think, have kind of learned that with this front office as time has progressed and evolved. What do you view as his long-term pro outlook? Can this be somebody who has a multi-year career? I did sign him to a 2-year two-way, or is this going to be like something's got to, if the shot doesn't stick, obviously it's going to be rough for him. But like, do you view this as something that could last more than a year or two?
Yeah, I do actually. I think relative to a 54th pick, he's got a decently high floor. Like, I would be pretty surprised if he's at least not floating around on rosters for the next 5 or 6 years. I think he's good value where they took him. I think he's a very, not only is he the athlete and the shooter, I think he's a pretty smart offensive player too, which will go a long way, especially on a team like the Pacers, where it's going to help if you're a good decision maker and can kind of operate in multiple different sets. So I think he's going to be a guy who I'm not sure how quickly he'll see the court, but maybe it'll take a couple unfortunate injuries for him to really see some rotation and minutes with the Pacers. But I think once he gets on the court, I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't become like a fringe rotation guy early on. Just as an offensive plug and play and the different scenarios he can hit in, obviously really good in transition. That helps for some Pacers stuff. I think he doesn't really turn the ball over. That's also good Pacer stuff. So I think those are two pretty good ways to solidify your status as like, hey, I can survive on an NBA court, is being able to knock down the open threes, survive on defense, and not turn the ball over.
I can already tell you my biggest criticism of him is going to be like, dude, be adventurous. He in summer league would not shoot. He wanted to keep the ball moving and he never wanted to turn it over. And like, that's great. To be clear, these are positive things I'm saying about a player right now. Don't turn it over. Don't mess up. That's good. Dude, shoot. Let it fly, man. Like, try to create some space. You're a good player. Him kind of getting that confidence will be step one for him in the NBA. Killian covers the draft and so many other things. Killian, where can people find you and where you say things like Taelon Peter should be drafted and many more things about young prospects?
You can find me on Twitter at Killian M. Wright. And then we have a draft podcast, me and my buddy Michael Stamps, called Stamped Right NBA Draft. You can find my work and articles on NBA Draft on SI, and then I do some stuff for Rockets on SI and Missouri on SI. So a lot of on SI stuff over there. All my articles are usually posted on my Twitter. So once again, Killian M. Wright on Twitter. You can find all my shots there. Rockets
are going to be fun and good. I have no idea about Mizzou sports, so I cannot.
Well, we'll hope they're fun and good.
Any sort of prediction on that? Who's the last good Mizzou basketball player? Michael Porter Jr. was supposed to go to Mizzou.
Well, he did go, and then he just played a game or two, and so
he got hurt.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Back injuries. Well,
did Johnson go there too?
Just got a 2-way contract.
Oh yeah, I did know that. I did know that.
He's going to be pretty solid, I think. Pretty nice 2-way player. So
any IU player that gets a 2-way, I'm determined to say is going to be the best player in the league. So you can.
Oh, he probably will. I'll agree with you on that.
Killian, thank you for the time. Everybody, thank you for tuning in and learning more about Taelon Peter and the rest of the new Pacers. Back soon with more. Thanks for listening.